And we are kicking things off here with Season 2 of the Let's Be Frank video podcast. I am Jason Duhe, excited to be back, and we're going to go ahead and bring along Head Coach Frank Monica. Extremely excited about Season 2. For tonight's show, we're going to have Jamboree recaps, some Week 1 previews of high school football, special guest J.T. Curtis. In our Let's Be Frank segment, we're going to talk about the LHSAA playoff injunction. And in Blitz the Ball, Coach, we're going to talk about bracket coverage versus man coverage. So, Coach, another season. We're starting off Season 2 here for our podcast. How do you feel going into this season after getting your feet wet last year?
Well, it's really, really exciting because, football season, it's nothing like it, especially Friday night football and Saturday afternoon, Saturday night ball. Everybody's undefeated. Everybody's excited. The media builds up everyone like they're going to be undefeated, and everybody's an All-American at this time and so forth. So everything right now is very, very positive until all of a sudden somebody hits you in the mouth, and things will change drastically after Friday and Saturday and Sunday.
Coach, I don't know what league you played in. I wasn't even a preseason All-American. I couldn't have made the third team All Honorable Mention team. But let's go ahead and jump into prep talk as we're going to dive in. A lot of jamborees that took place this past weekend, some quality matchups. We'll start out, we had St. Aug taking on Shaw. Coach, 13-9 victory in favor of St. Aug, but it was a tight ball game, and Shaw's defense really stepped up in that one.
And not only that, St. Aug had to come on at the end of the game to win the ball game. So and St. Aug's supposed to be loaded, but again, right now everybody is, and you never know the injury bug can hit people. But Shaw had been a beneficiary of some real nice transfers there, so they could be a team to contend with, especially since they moved down to the 4A class.
Lutcher took on Destrehan. Destrehan pulled out the 7-0 win. 2 state champions going head-to-head in the Jamboree. And that's a nice job by Lutcher to keep it within 7 points. Again, going to have to find a way to move the ball offensively, having Winfield headed out this season.
No question. That from what I understand, I talked to Coach Jenkins the other day. He substituted 2 quarterbacks. One of them was his son. He played them both in the game. It looks like that's going to be the scenario throughout the year to play 2 different quarterbacks. But you're right. He has to find another offense because, Winfield had 30, 40 carries a ball game last year. So, but, he also hung in there with a real good, talented Destrehan team. And they still have a lot of D1 guys all over the field. So it's going to be interesting to see how that shakes down. Lutcher's defense is very good.
Rummel took on St. Paul's and pulled it out 13-10, but it took a late game effort by the Rummel Raiders to pull that one out.
Yeah, they trailed in the ball game, and I think they also were playing 2 quarterbacks, and the second guy that came in actually threw 2 touchdown passes, and they were very, very fortunate to come out of there against a very physical and big St. Paul's team.
Brother Martin took on John Errett, 10-7 victory in favor of Brother Martin, coming off that trip to the state finals last year. Kind of feeling like they're going to build some momentum, but a really new ball club there. And John Errett always has a physical, big, athletic group of guys. It's all about putting it together.
No question. I think that, I think Brother Martin was pretty resilient in that ball game, and it went back and forth for a little bit from what I can understand. So, but they're always going to be good. Coach Bo needs to do a phenomenal job. He's got, a lot of players. He's got numbers, but Eric's always got some people that can run and they'll be physical and they can play. They'll always have some college prospects on their field.
St. James took on De La Salle, defeated them 6-0. It's always hard to tell, Coach, and you mentioned that when we were talking before, how much the team puts stock into this Jamboree. We know these are 2 good ball clubs. We know St. James normally has a lot of athletes on the perimeter and in the backfield. I know they have a really special quarterback who's been playing for quite some time, only putting up 6 points. But De La Salle is no slouch, a very solid physical ball club, usually very big up front in particular, and you would know having played them quite a bit.
Jason, what happens with 15-minute halves, if a team gets a long drive and you don't have the ball very much, you don't get many at-bats. So that's why it's hard to decipher exactly how good is a football team. You can tell a little bit about your team, but it doesn't tell the entire story. But that's also the first time, Jamboree's first time that you test your special teams. And with new personnel, a new scheme, because if they go change schemes, that's where they're going to want to look at it. Because people don't use the scheme in any type of special teams in the scrimmages. So the first time, the initial time you're looking at a new plan is in the Jamboree. So that's why it's hard to predict how these Jamborees will go.
Coach, I know you changed your punting formation at one point. It threw a lot of people off. Did you kind of field test it at some point during the Jamboree? Because I remember a lot of guys from back in the day were saying, I can't believe Coach changed his philosophy. So you kind of went to that more spread out style. Did you kind of field test it during that time?
You go to and you pick up things as a coach, and sometimes you go to a clinic and you really like something that you see and you try to install it. But it's the most important thing is you teach something that you know, and if you know it well, stick with that plan. If it works, why change it? And a lot of times we want to be gurus in this game, and we see it looks sexy on television, and somebody else is doing it. But the most important thing is you better have success doing it. You better know what you're doing, because if there's a mistake, as Coach Curtis and I talked about, if there's a mistake out there, you know how to correct it.
Absolutely. And Coach, St. Charles Catholic defeated Ponchatoula 22-0. Two-time defending state champions under Wayne Stein. Very well coached team. Concern maybe coming into the season would be offensive production, but they seem to be doing just fine after that 22-0 victory in the Jamboree.
He's got a new quarterback, but he's pretty talented. He's got a heck of an arm. They got a new running back, a little tailback that can really go. They got a couple of guys on the outside that can go. The offensive line's not real deep, but their defense has got a lot of people returning, and it's going to be really hard. You're not going to see big numbers run up against their defense. And in fact, they had a defensive touchdown in that short ball game. And I think, like I said before, unless you play them, you really don't know what you're getting yourself into. You better be prepared in all phases.
Coach, St. Martin's took on Newman. Newman pulled out the 28-14 victory. You mentioned that St. Martin scoring those 14 points against a pretty stout Newman team was pretty impressive. And we'll see if they can kind of push forward moving into the season.
Yeah, what I understand is that St. Martin did not stop Newman. Newman scored whenever they had the football, but on the flip side, for them to give up 2 touchdowns to them. And again, I know they do a heck of a job. Coach Dyer's first year over there as the head coach, and they got a heck of a running back. But I was surprised that when it gets a Newman team that's been there before, that they actually scored 2 touchdowns against. I don't know exactly how it happened, but the score was a little bit closer than I thought it would be.
Absolutely, and you got to credit Newman, who continues to push forward. North Shore defeated Jesuit 7-0 in what was called a defensive struggle, and obviously with that final score, that can be kind of stated. It's hard to put too much stock, as you mentioned, the way that the layout is, but Jesuit's going to have to find a way to move the football a little bit more and try to get it. Obviously, put the ball in the end zone if they're going to compete in a brutal Catholic league.
I talked to Coach Manali during the week last week, and he said a lot of underclassmen will start for him on this football team. That bodes well for the future. Sometimes you have to bite the bullet and do that, and just kind of get your team ready for the future. And who knows? I mean, sometimes these young guys will grow up quickly and be really surprise you at the end of the year. And remember, with everybody making the playoffs like it is, you can really sacrifice a couple ball games along the road, but it's how you finish the season that counts.
And it was Holy Cross defeating Belle Chase 21-13. Belle Chase had a team that made some noise late in the playoffs. Holy Cross, brand new coaching staff, 18 starters returning. So it was good to see Holy Cross getting off on the right foot, and we'll see if they can continue pushing forward this upcoming week.
I think they'll be one of the more talented teams in the whole Catholic League. So there will be a team to reckon with, and Coach White, he knows what to do with them. I've coached against him before. I think they'll do a real fine job. And he's got a couple D1 guys on that football team. So the rest of the district got to beware. But I really believe, Jason, it all depends on how you start. If you get off to a pretty good start, teams start to get a little bit more confidence in their playing ability. All of a sudden, if somebody hits them in the mouth early, and if you don't respond from that, it could be a long season.
Absolutely. And before we go ahead and head into week 1 previews, we want to once again thank the Accardo and Dufresne Law Firms for being the title sponsor of the Let's Be Frank video podcast. Again, we wouldn't be able to put on this production without them. And again, we want to make sure we thank them for sponsoring this show. So week 1, Coach, a lot of big games out the gate. We're going to go ahead and start with St. Charles taking on Shaw. We talked about it just a minute ago. Shaw's defense looked really solid in that Jamboree. St. Charles, of course, has a really good defense. A little bit of changes in the offensive position. You have a brand new quarterback, but he has some experience. show a lot of talent offensively. We'll see if they can kind of put it together moving forward against St. Charles. But I would not expect a 30-7 score like we saw last year.
Well, I think, Shaw's in all last year. Special teams were a big part of that. And I think they'll be prepared for what St. Charles will bring. But Shaw picked up two fine receivers. One of them was really like a 6'5" guy on the outside. So I think they'll be really, really good in the offensive line. But yet they'll counter against a really, real good, might be one of the better defenses that St. Charles has had. That they have to go against it. They can run to the ball. They're not extremely big, but they really are built for the spread offense. So it's going to be a good game on the road. It's a great opener. I always believe that you should open up on the road. I like that because I think your team grows up on the road.
And in our second game, we have Zachary traveling to East Ascension. Last year it was Zachary winning 35-13. Of course, we know about Zachary, extremely talented group. They lost a lot of D1 guys last year, and what do you know? They just reload every year. Coach Bruton's done a great job there, and East Ascension with a big test to try to start out and challenge himself.
I think, from what I understand, Coach Darnell Lee has told me this might be the biggest team he's ever seen, and everyone that's seen him, he said they're gigantic across the offensive line, defensive line. They average almost 300 pounds in the offensive line, which is unheard of in high school. Some big old guys, So, and I know Zachary's always talented. But Coach Darnell Lee and his staff, they've always gotten close, but they've not gotten over the hump. So this could be the year that they do, because I think finally he's got a quarterback that he can rely on and that really can operate his offense.
And moving on, we also have Vanderbilt Catholic traveling to E.D. White. E.D. White has done a fantastic job of making these deep pushes, especially the last few years in the playoffs. They're trying to get over that hump. Vanderbilt Catholic struggled to find their footing a bit last year. Another year under Coach Milton. We'll see how that plays out. But rivalry game, Coach, you can't beat it, and especially opening out the gate with such a big game.
Backyard brawl. They're 15 miles apart. There's both schools are very similar. They have similar talent. They'll be hard-nosed, well-coached guys. It's going to probably come down. This is a game that you can maybe see going to overtime. Because both coaches really, really stress the run game. I think it's going to be that game could be over in about an hour and a half, But on the flip side of it, I think E.D. White's gotten a better half of it in the last couple of years. But Vanderbilt's been very young, and Coach Minter, I think, is taking that program to another step. That's a game you would love to see, and because the rivalry itself is going to be intense. It'll be a packed house, and somebody's going to have to. It's a shame in that game that somebody's going to have to lose it.
Coach, last year, E.D. White won that game 35-0. You've been on all sides, all ends of rivalry games. When you drop a game like that, not necessarily by that margin, but when you drop a rival game that big, what is it like to prepare for that game and coming into that week, especially if it's opening the season?
Oh, the coaches will put on the board. They'll put that score up on the board all summer long and say, hey, this is your opening ball game right there. And all the focus will be on that ball game. And all your summer preparation, during the summer, coaches normally take one or two games and they break it down and they start installing their game plan even during the summer. And it could be little things that they add on the offense or defense, and it won't show it to anybody until they play that first ball game. So why reveal it when it doesn't count? So that's everybody's got that trump card that they want to play. So that's why that first ball game is very, very important.
All right, and moving on, we also have a big game between Lafayette Christian, who takes on Acadiana. Last year, Lafayette Christian won 38-21. LCA 6 straight trips to a state final. They dropped their game to who Acadiana lost to in the Jamboree, which was St. Thomas More. We know Acadiana is a fantastic ball club, very well coached. 8 wins last year for Acadiana. Coach, we both know doesn't cut it there, and they have been preaching that all summer to get back to where they know they can be, which is atop the state.
One of those teams that run the split back veer better than anybody, and I mean, they a lot like John Curtis, the way they execute it. They normally do it with speed. They don't have the tremendous size, but they do it with speed and execution. And and Lafayette Christian got an electric quarterback that's back, and he's supposed to be an all-world guy. So that's a cross-town rivalry. So Lafayette Christian in the Lafayette community, everybody over there. So that's a big natural rivalry because a lot of those kids come from that same area, And they play little league ball against one another, but now they're playing. I mean, with one another. Now they're playing against one another from various high schools.
As you mentioned, Coach Juwan Johnson, incredible athlete, over 5,000 yards and 60 touchdowns. Incredible athlete. LSU commit, definitely got to keep an eye on. And Lafayette Christian is a team I mentioned last year, was young. They still made it to the state finals, and it would not surprise me one bit to see them in that position once again. Rummel takes on Ouachita Parish. This time they head on the road. Was a really big ball game that they played at. It was in Hammond last year, right, Coach? And
it was in Hammond last year. Yes, it was. And I think Rummel took advantage of the 2 long pass plays that they threw the ball against them. But Ouachita Parish had a real good running back. I don't know if that guy's back this year or not. But they have a new coach, and this game going on the road for Rummel. I mean, I know that. My son, Coach Nick Monica, is a little nervous about it, because you always want to get off to a good start, but going on the road is always a challenge because you got with schedules with buses and pregame meals and what time you have to leave and things of that nature. So that's always a challenge in itself. But Ouachita Parish is a pretty good opponent, and they always have a lot of speed and a new coaching staff, so he doesn't know what to expect from them really.
It'll definitely be a challenge to also take on Zach Jackson, a third-year quarterback out of Ouachita Parish. That experience definitely might be part of what happens in this ball game. East St. John will take on St. James. East St. John won 28-20 last year in a tight ball game. St. James, very talented team. We already know that coming in. And we know that East St. John has a lot of athletes, especially on the perimeter, big line as well. But this is a kind of a backyard brawl type situation again. 2 minutes away, and it should be a big matchup.
Well, the East St. John coach Brendan Brown is really, really high on his team. He's mentioned that he thinks that he can make a run at the district championship, but last year the game against St. James is always tough because St. James, even though they have a couple of players that are not there that went on and graduated, they will hit you, and he better be ready for that. That could be quite a game. And you look at East St. John's schedule after this; they got a couple of teams that they should win, and so this is a big game for them because they can have a chance to run the table before they go to the district. So, but St. James is not going to give them the football game. They'll find a way, and they'll compete on that side of the river.
And also in that game, they're honoring Antoine Carter, former defensive coordinator for St. James, again, passed away this past summer. Again, I want to give a shout out to Coach. Great man, has been to multiple places in the river parishes, but want to go ahead and pay my respect to him. Wonderful man and a great friend. Jesuit takes on Slidell. Coach, last year 16-13 ball game in favor of Jesuit. Slidell won a district title. We'll see if that momentum builds into this year against, as you mentioned, a team in Jesuit that has to grow up quick.
Yeah, they're going to have to grow up. And Slidell is really coming on. And they won it last year, and they seem to be the team to beat over there this year in St. Tammany Parish. They're well coached. They look like they have a quarterback that can throw the ball a little bit. And Jesuit, as I said, that they will be tested early in that first ball game. So, going across the lake is always a challenge, and the things are a little bit different. But I look for, Jesuit to really grow up. But do they have enough, or would they be mature enough early to defeat the Slidell? I don't know. It could be a tough one for them.
Absolutely. Moving on, Madison Prep takes on Brother Martin. We just mentioned how experienced Brother Martin is in a Thursday ball game. Madison Prep returns a lot this year. Very talented and experienced ball club. It'll be a good chance to see if Brother Martin can start off on the right foot. We say it every time, but you can't get off to a false start before you even get into the Catholic League because you don't know when you're going to be able to come up for air.
Yeah, I think this game will come down to the third and fourth quarter, second half. Brother Martin has more bodies, and Madison Prep will be really speed and got a little size with it, but it'll come down to more size. And I think that the wear and tear of Brother Martin at the end, especially third, fourth quarter, will show.
In our next matchup, we have Hahnville, who takes on Newman. Last year it was a 35-14 victory in favor of Newman. Hahnville looking to turn things around, looking to try to put what happened in the last year behind them and move forward. Meanwhile, Newman has to. They lose Arch Manning, 5-star quarterback. They now have a few different players. Eli Friend is now their quarterback, and again, trying to get acclimated to their new system and how to move the football. But it looked like they had a lot of success in the Jamboree. So we'll see how they can continue to try to push the envelope offensively.
They'll be good on offense. Coach Stewart will take on the play calling duties once again, and I think they'll be very, very good offensively because I know he's had done an excellent job in the past. Hornville will have a bigger team. They'll have a little bit more speed on the field. I really look for this to be a high scoring affair, and so it'll be very interesting. It's a good matchup, and I know Hornville is not used to going into the Newman confines of that little stadium. But so that's going to be very interesting. But I look for Newman to put up some points, and I think Hornville will match that. It's all a matter of who's going to play the best defense.
And in our last prep matchup that we'll talk about is going to be Riverside traveling to St. Thomas Aquinas. Riverside beat Bogalusa 26-6 in their Jamboree win. Lose a lot of talent offensively, but for a small school, they continue to stack and compile talent. And of course, Coach Lee Roussel, in his second year there, taking on St. Thomas Aquinas.
Oh, they'll be well coached. His whole staff. He's got a great staff with him. He's got some guys that have been head coaches on that staff. And that Coach Latches has been there. John White's been. Those guys have been head coaches in the past. Coach Roussel himself was an excellent college coach before he went over there. He had the pleasure of coaching with him on my staff at one time. He's going to have them ready. I know he doesn't have a lot of players. He's got a couple of guys going both ways, but the 11 he's putting out there will be pretty good football players. So, and the win against Bogalusa, that's a pretty good win against a very, very talented Bogalusa team. And so I don't see St. Thomas Aquinas slowing them down any whatsoever.
And we'll go ahead and move on to college football, and a ton to get to, but we're going to start, of course, with our local flavor. LSU takes on Florida State in a neutral site game. Coach, we'll dive into that in a special segment later, but Mason Smith is going to be out for that game. LSU has to find a way defensively to overcome huge deficits from what we've seen at the cornerback position. Offensively, you have around 8 running backs that you can choose from, a massive wide receiving core. But Florida State has a really talented offense, a lot of receivers, including some transfers. And you also have to pay respect to their quarterback as well, who's done a phenomenal job in Jordan Travis. So we'll see how things play out. But I think the spread can't be tight enough for this ball game. I think it's going to come down to the wire, maybe even a last-second field goal.
I really look for this to be high scoring, Jason. I think both offenses. I don't know how you can stop Jaden Daniels. I think he's really good with the zone read stuff and the RPO stuff that he can do. He can beat you with his feet or his arm. I understand that his arm got better. He's got some receivers that have really stepped up. The neighbors guy looks like he's a go-to guy, and he's got a little speed out there. He's got a couple of transfers. But as you said, and you're right, the secondary will be tested because this quarterback for Florida State is one of the best, I think, in the country. I think he's really, really good. And listen, Florida State, I mean, Coach Norville, he's got some skins on the wall. I mean, that's why he's there. So he's built that program, and everybody said, well, they're building programs now through the transfer portal. It doesn't matter. It's fair to everybody. And one of the big receivers, actually, LSU almost got him also, but he ended up at Florida State. So look for this to be a higher scoring affair. It could come down. I hate to say this. It could come down to these special teams because I don't know if LSU's solved that situation. I do know they've solved it with return game because they got the Anderson kid there. I know that's been settled. But is their whole kicking game going to be? Is going to be they have to step it up. They got to go from a number 1 to all the way a 10 as far as the kicking game is concerned. Because last year that kicking game was non-effective, and I mean ineffective, and really it probably cost them a national championship when you think about it. But don't count Florida State. I think the spread is at 2.5, and I think if you're a betting guy, I think that 2.5 could hold up.
And as you pointed out, Coach, the kicking situation was definitely an issue for LSU. We'll see moving forward. I think Brian Kelly should have earned LSU fans' trust by this point. But I will say, I don't know if hiring a guy who's splitting his duties as special teams coordinator and in another role is going to be the answer. We'll see. Time will tell.
My experience with that, it doesn't work. I think you have to have one guy to go full speed with that. Okay.
And we'll go ahead and move on to our next game. South Alabama taking on Tulane. Coach, what's interesting about this game, we know the type of talent that Tulane has. We know they're coming in with a ranking next to their name, which is something that they haven't really had coming into the preseason. However, South Alabama is a scary team waiting in the weeds. Now, when you hear their name, it might not strike fear into your heart. This is a team that went on the road and nearly pulled off an upset in the Rose Bowl just a year ago. Pile up a bunch of wins, and if Tulane's not careful, they could find themselves on upset alert here. But I know the type of coaching Tulane has, but again, this is a team that you cannot overlook and be looking at Ole Miss or any other game down the road.
No question, Jason. I think this is a really, really scary game for Tulane. South Alabama returned something like 21 players from the starters from last year. That's a lot of players to return. They're right there. And this is the biggest thing, issue that Tulane has to deal with, I think, to stay focused, because I hear a lot of talk about the Ole Miss game. Well, they got to play this game first, and the Ole Miss game is a week later. There's a lot of talk, and everybody you talk to, they overlooking South Alabama. That's not a gimme. And the other thing is, and I think Coach Fritz realizes this, Tulane is not loaded with five-star recruits. They have to play really, really hard and play well and not turn the ball over and be a really sound in the kicking game to win games. I mean, they just can't go out there with a lot of teams that have these five-star recruits and all these NFL draft choices. I mean, you can count the amount of draft choices they'll have with probably in two fingers. But that's one thing that you have to understand when you coach at Tulane. These guys have to play all out just to be able to compete with people.
And don't forget, they also have Southern Miss lying in the weeds as well, which is a team that they dropped the game to last year. Again, when you look retrospectively, had they played at the end of the year, probably a different result. But again, you don't get the opportunity to play teams when you feel like it. You have to play them when they're on the schedule.
Amen.
So, Coach, looking at the next matchup, we have a Thursday matchup between Florida taking on Utah. We know Florida's going to have a quarterback change, a lot of changes, but Kyle Whittingham and this Utah program, they're going to be changing conferences soon. But Kyle Whittingham, I personally feel like is the most underrated, undervalued coach probably in all of college football, because what he has done with that program has been phenomenal. And I think it's going to be a big test for Florida to go on the road. They pulled off the win at home last year, but Utah is a very sound program, beat USC twice last year. It's going to be a tough upset to pull.
What people don't realize about Utah and Utah State the same way, they're very, very physical. They get a lot of kids from the islands, a lot of kids, from around. They're just a real big football team, and they got talent now. It's not just coaching there. He does a great job, but they have a lot of talent. They're big and physical. Their offensive, defensive line are always big kids, and they will run the football on you. But listen, Florida, I think Coach Napier is an excellent coach. I really like his offensive scheme. I don't know if he's there yet. I know they got to transfer a quarterback. I don't know if he's there yet, but you're in a state that has a lot of football players in the state of Florida. So it's going to take a little while, but I look for him to build it. Now, I don't know if he can beat Utah. Utah is naturally the favorite, but if he can pull this one off, it really gives him a great start.
And in our next matchup, we have Virginia taking on Tennessee, as Virginia will hit the road and take on the Vols. Coach, this Tennessee ball club was pretty solid last year. You have a few changes at quarterback. You're going to have Milton stepping in, and you mentioned that you saw during the summer that he has a heck of an arm, but it'll be interesting to see if he can put it together against, not just air, but against actual opponents.
I don't know what's between his ears, but he's a heck of a guy, very friendly. Talked to everybody. Everybody by the time camp was over with knew him. He's got a phenomenal arm. In fact, I saw him throw a football. I don't know if he went 80 yards, but it went at least 75 yards in the air. And and after that, he did a backflip. So that's how athletic the guy is now. I think they'll get off to a good start. I don't know if Virginia's there. Virginia has always been a real competitive team, but I just don't know if they have the horses to stay with Tennessee.
And looking at our next matchup, we have Colorado taking on TCU. Coach, we've discussed this quite a few times in some of our phone conversations. Colorado does not have the depth. TCU loses a ton of talent. Of course, they lose a lot of offensive weapons, which will come into play. And you also have to add in TCU played pretty much every game by the skin of their teeth. Whether it was they won most of their games, they lost 2 of their last 3, I believe it was. But the fact of the matter is, every game was tight. So the fascinating thing is, can Colorado, with a group of talent, although paper thin, can they go into TCU and pull off this upset?
It looks like it's hard for Coach Prime to do that. It looks like it'd be hard for him to gather a bunch of transfers and put them together in just a short period of time. He's going to coach them up, and he's going to get them to play hard. But TCU is an established program. They're established, and any school that plays in Texas is going to have a lot of talent, because I think the best state in the whole United States as far as talent is concerned is Texas. You look at some of the quarterbacks that are playing for other schools all around the country, they're from Texas or California. So I really believe that TCU is probably going to win this football game, and if Colorado can pull this thing off, Coach Prime will be Coach of the Year after week one.
Coach, got to ask, we're talking about these teams. Travis Hunter, a very talented 5-star player, committed to Coach Deion Sanders when he was when he moved over from Jackson. There's a lot of talk about him playing both ways. How viable is that in a Power 5 program for a guy to play cornerback and wide receiver?
I think that's awfully tough, because he has to have a break somewhere, especially if you're running routes and you run a lot of streak routes, and all of a sudden you have to come back to the huddle and turn around. That's an awfully tough combination. Maybe if it's another position, but to be a receiver DB. Now, in special situations, say, okay, we need you down on the goal line, red zone. You're our guy, we go-to guy. Maybe we're running screens with you, especially, and I'm hitting your ball in the reverse. That's different. But as far as now, the only thing bad about that, you tell him the defense exactly where. If he's in a ball game, he's not there for window dressing. So he's probably going to get the football, and you don't have to be a great scout to realize, well, he's in the ball game.
Absolutely. Moving on to our next matchup, you have Boise State, who travels to Washington. Boise State has gone through quite a few coaching changes over the years, but again, they always have upset on their mind. Washington, very highly ranked. This could have upset written on it.
It could. They said, if anybody would beat Washington, I think it could be right here with Boise State, because they're a sneaky team, and they always have been. They're always there at the end, and those guys will play hard, play over their head. They play with a chip on their shoulder. But I will say this: I've never seen a team like Washington that can really, really stretch the field like they can. And I don't see Boise State beating them, but they certainly can give them a scare.
Coach, next matchup, North Carolina, South Carolina. Again, our thoughts and prayers go out to the North Carolina community after the tragedy that fell upon their campus earlier this week. But in terms of football, you have to assume that's going to light a fire under some of these guys. And it'd be an interesting matchup. Coach Beamer really has South Carolina moving in the right direction. And, of course, Coach at UNC, they got a pretty good ball coach that you're familiar with as well.
Yeah, that it's really good because Coach Mac Brown, he's there. He's a great motivator. He's a heck of a recruiter. It's kind of a state versus state. It's a natural rivalry there. And I really think that's an automatic build up to this ball game, and also the pride of the two different conferences. The SEC against the ACC. So this ball game is going to have real big implications. But I really think that North Carolina, with that quarterback who's probably a Heisman candidate, has a chance with the Derek May. So I look for North Carolina to prevail here.
So that'll do it for our first segment, and we want to go ahead and thank our sponsor before we head to our first break, and we bring on our special guest, Head Coach J.T. Curtis. We want to thank Accardo and Dufresne Law Firms, Samuel Accardo Jr. and Henri P. Dufresne, your go-to River Parish lawyers. Experience, tenacity, and results. Sammy Accardo and Henri Dufresne provide comprehensive legal services in personal injury, hurricane claims, business litigation, successions, and estate planning. Our trial experience, know-how, and commitment to protect and serve our clients is unparalleled. We provide complete real estate, title, and escrow services through our affiliate State Title LLC. The River Parishes is our home, and serving our communities is our passion. Samuel Accardo Jr. and Henri P. Dufresne, your go-to River Parish lawyers. Experience, tenacity, and results. Sammy Accardo and Henri Dufresne provide comprehensive legal services in personal injury, hurricane claims, business litigation, successions, and estate planning. Our trial experience, know-how, and commitment to protect and serve our clients is unparalleled. We provide complete real estate, title, and escrow services through our affiliate, State Title LLC.
The River Parishes is our home, and serving our communities is our passion. Based out of Gramercy, Louisiana, LSR produces Southern cane, pure cane sugar, which is only grown, refined, and packaged in Louisiana. LSR utilizes the latest innovations in technology, as well as ensuring the growth and stability of Louisiana's sugarcane farmers by integrating more than 800 growers in the industry's economic structure. Southern cane is available in your local Associated Grocers and Rouse's supermarkets.
Since 1972, Riverlands Insurance Services has been dedicated to securing the best insurance products and services available to protect you, your family, your assets, and your business. Our goal has been to establish a strong relationship and partnership between you, the insurance company, and our agency, creating a circle of success that prepares for disasters before they actually happen.
Welcome back to the Let's Be Frank video podcast, and we're going to head into our second segment with our special guest tonight, who's been the head coach for 55 years, has won 615 games as a head coach, and has won 28 state championship games. Our special guest tonight is the head coach of the John Curtis Patriots, J.T. Curtis. Coach, thank you so much for joining us. And a quick question before we go ahead and get started. You know, football is a game that's ever-changing, and over the course of your career, you've still maintained at the top of your competition. How have you had to adapt your approach to the day-to-day game planning for football in modern day?
I believe this, and I think Coach Monica would agree with this. Kids want the same thing today that they wanted in 1969, 1979, 1989, 1999. They want to be disciplined. They want to know that you care about them. They want to know that you're interested in them more than besides just football, but that you try to approach them as people. And even though there are times when they certainly resist your discipline or they resist your correction, that's what they really want. And so it really hasn't changed from that perspective, in my opinion. Certainly, the invention of the telephone, certainly with the long hair, the afro hair, the beards, all those things come and go. But the discipline and the love that you participate with them in terms of them as individual young men has never changed, and I don't think ever will.
Exactly, Coach. Well said. Coach, you know, we were talking prior to the time we went on the air, how things have changed for you and I from the tape standpoint, from the Super 8 tape to the 16 millimeter tape. Now we're Zooming. Can you believe we're Zooming this? And
Unbelievable.
We can't believe how that transition has taken place, you know, over the years. You've been through this, now going to your 6 decades of coaching. And, you know, times have changed, Coach, but you said it right. I don't think your value system ever changes as a coach. You know,
No.
I mean, I don't think you can. You can't be someone else. So I appreciate you saying that. Coach, I don't want to go too much further. Jason talked about all your championships and a big event coming up in the future, but I want to also touch on your family. I had the pleasure of coaching your son and Johnny. Jeff I had personally coached Jeff, and what a fine player he was, and also just a fine person, good Christian guys. I know he's got the 5 kids. He's always running around, and Johnny was just a hard-nosed guy that when he transferred to Tulane and got an opportunity to meet them and coach with them. So that was great. And I know your wife, Lydia, is also, you know, she participates in the school. She's a singer. And it must be nice just to have everybody in school and the family affair, not to mention the other guys that you have on your staff, you know, Leon and some of the other. You got a great coaching staff, Coach. And I mean, it's not when anybody plays against you guys, they better be prepared.
Well, you know, Frank, I appreciate you saying that because they were good young men. They were young men who I thought have been examples not only as players but as fathers and now as coaches. I think that they have made a difference in the lives of the young men that they've been associated with. And to be honest with you, they picked up those values not only from me and from her mom, but from the coaches they were around at the collegiate level. And guys like you and the other coaches that Jeff and Johnny had the opportunity to play with have given them a lot of direction about things that they should do and the way that they should conduct themselves. And to be honest with you, by the same token, some things that maybe they shouldn't do and how they react and how they treat people.
Coach,
So,
I remember your dad too. I mean, you can't omit him because he's the guy that set the standard, and he was a great leader.
Well, here was the deal with him, and people really don't understand that in his mind, this was a direction that God was bringing him, and he was not going to be deterred from it. The story of how this school began is just unbelievable, and it was a God-centered thing, and he was able to overcome a tremendous amount of obstacles. I have this question asked to me a lot. How do y'all all work together? We can't get along when we in a house. How do y'all all work together? Well, I'm going to tell you, my mom and dad wouldn't have it the other way. It wasn't an option. We were going to work together, and we were going to be a family that supported one another. And again, I think it comes from leadership in the home, and it comes from a Christian perspective of what God intends for the head of the home. The man in the home should be the example for the whole family. And I'm so proud of my sons, and now I've had the opportunity for my grandson to join the staff, and it's absolutely a joy to be a part of that, to be honest with you.
No question. And your dad set the standard for that, Coach, because I've always said that a fish always thinks from his head, so you have to have that headmaster, somebody to start the whole thing. Coach, I want to also talk about, we can't let this night go without that unprecedented moment that you have coming up, hopefully, where you break the record. And I know that you're being bombarded with this thing, and I know it's hard just to say that it's another game, but I know there's going to be a big celebration when that time comes. But just think about what you're doing on a national scale and everything that you've accomplished, all the Hall of Fame that you're already in. But this is something that will stand forever. What's your feeling about you and your family and everything? How do you kind of keep your focus here?
Well, I've always had the philosophy that I cannot control tomorrow, that I can only control today and what I do today and my preparation for the day. I can't change the past, but I can certainly learn from the past. And so what I've tried to do through the years is and you said it too, Frank, having guys like Legon and you remember Mike Robertson, who passed away a few years ago, was with me as an offensive line coach. And then having these guys that have been part of the John Curtis program has been such a benefit to us, and having them understand the importance of preparation and taking care of the business of the day. And tomorrow will take care of itself. If we do what we need to do today, and we do it as best we can, tomorrow will take care of itself. And that's the approach that I've taken with the games that we're playing now. Certainly I get asked about this a lot, and I understand that. But my responsibility is not about tomorrow, it's about today. And the young men, to get them prepared for the game that they're going to play. Look, my dad said this a long time ago, and I'll never forget this. He said, you remember that you had your day in the sun. This is their day. This is their time. And everything that we do should be geared toward letting those young men have the best opportunity to be successful as young men and to grow, as the scripture says, in wisdom and in stature and favor with both God and man. And that's how we've tried to approach it. And that's what I'm going to continue to do as we move through these next few weeks.
The good Lord also blessed you, Coach, with health, that you could be on the sideline. Because that many of us that have been into coaching know how intense it is, and it takes its toll on you physically. But you've been blessed with good health to be able to stay on that sideline and still going. Coach, I also want to swap a little bit about, and everybody talks about different offenses. Now you got people running the spread, one back stuff, and throwing the ball all over the RPOs and things. But you have stuck to your guns, and your philosophy is to run the split back view and run the football. Even though your defenses have been great over time, You have good offenses and good players, but your defense has been just relentless over the years. But explain to me, why did you decide to go with the veer? And nobody runs it better than you guys. And one thing that we noticed as being a competitor against you guys, if you take something away, you know exactly what the next step is and what to go to.
Well, and I think that's really the key. I don't like the flavor of the month. I think you find what you feel comfortable in. You find that the things that you can do, and that you have answers for what's going to happen to you on defense. And you don't grab bag to grab an answer, that you have a sound football reason for what you do. And hopefully that we've been able to do that. And obviously in the split back veer, it's something that people have not seen recently as much as they did in the past. And we feel like that through the years, we've been able to develop some thinking about, if they do this, then we can counter with that. And football is a game of 11 on 11, and who can get the advantage in terms of finding a position or a place where you can maybe take an advantage from a numbers perspective. So I think this, Frank, I don't care what level I coached on. If I'd have gone ahead and coached in college, or if I'd have gone on and coached in pro ball or had that opportunity, some form of option would have been a part of my offense, because it presents such pressure on the defense to be able to handle the option and the passing game simultaneously. I think really gives us an advantage, and really limits what a defense can do in the secondary, and therefore makes the passing game a little easier to execute.
Coach, you remember a guy by the name of Yeoman that coached at Houston?
Yes, sir.
When he started coming out with this split back veer stuff, and they're not blocking two people at the line of scrimmage, and everybody was going crazy. And then he goes to clinics and he's telling people we're not blocking two people, and everybody fell in love with it. He said, "My guts, I love this offense. You don't have to block a couple of people."
Well, I tell people this, Frank. Sometimes your best player, I don't have to block. I can block him with a 150-pound back, because if we don't tackle him, he's going to run past him. And I just think, again, that's an advantage to this offense. There are two guys on the line of scrimmage that, in theory, I do not have to block. They're going to have to execute and tackle the dive, and if they don't, we're going to give the ball to the dive back and control the clock and bring it down the field, and let them get frustrated that they can't sack the quarterback. And I think it is definitely an advantage in our style of offense.
I want a quick story, Coach. Larry Zerline, you remember him? He was offensive line coach with us at Tulane. In fact, he coached Jerry Godfrey, and he worked with Coach Yeoman. And he said, "Well, Coach," he said, "what happens if they start doing this and they take this away?" And he said, "Psh, call timeout." I used to tell that story all the time. Coach, also, I got to ask, you sent a number of kids to college and some even in the pros. Approximately how many guys have you sent on to college from your program?
Frank, I have no idea. You're right. It's been a bunch. And when you count all levels, including at Division III, it's a lot of guys. It really is. And we've been very blessed to be able to do that. But, I said today at the Quarterback Club luncheon, 99% of the guys that play for us and played for you aren't going to play in college. This is their moment. This is their opportunity. And though we've had some really outstanding players, and you've played against some of them, it's high school football. And the game is won and lost with high school kids that are just dedicated, committed to, and love playing the game. We don't have the NIL stuff. We don't have all the fancy deals that they have. They play because they love the game, and really that's what makes coaching at this level a lot of fun. It's what I call the purity of the sport. It is just pure, competitive, want to play, want to continue to improve themselves. And certainly my job is to encourage that. Sometimes I got to do it in a more vocal way than others. But again, they're out there because they want to be and they want to compete. And it's what makes this sport so great. No question, Coach. Kids love structure. They love structure, Coach, you mentioned earlier something about opportunities. And I know you had to have a lot of opportunities to go to college.
maybe even the pros or something like that. I know I kind of lived that, and I look back sometimes that maybe I should have done something else. Have you ever had any regrets about doing that, or you thought this was your calling?
No, I really, well, I feel like this. I think both teaching and coaching is a calling. I think that if you're going to teach at the high school, junior high school level, elementary school level, it's a special person that's able to do that. I walk into our 5-year-old or 4-year-old class, and all those little kids will be, and I'm thinking to myself, my goodness, I couldn't do this if they paid me $1 million. But those teachers just love doing it. They love the kids. The same thing with junior high school kids. That's a tough age to coach and to teach in a classroom, and I think it's a calling. And I have always felt like that what I do and what my sons do is a calling, and they love it, and they feel like this is where God has directed their life. And I think that's one of the reasons that they're successful at it. And I truly believe that it's something that's very special. And do I have a regret? Absolutely not. Now, I got to be honest with you. When they started paying them $5 million a year, my wife kind of frowned a little bit. She she would have maybe liked that $5 million and $8 million a year. But you know what? You can't buy the things that we have, and you can't buy. And I know you with your sons, the experiences that you've had with your sons and your grandchildren, you can't buy it. It's not for sale.
Amen. Amen. Coach, I got the expression, my wife and I, we never go to a restaurant that doesn't have a drive-up window. You know what I mean? How that goes. Coach, that one thing I wanted to, I got 2 more questions for you, but this, I remember we were playing you guys, and of course, I'm responsible for a lot of you wins, so you owe me part of that trophy, something like that. But anyway, we were playing you guys, and we couldn't get over your defensive line on one particular play. I mean, they were taking the right step, and they were doing a rip technique, and they all 3 of them were just perfect. They looked like the Radio City Rockettes. And I said, my God, look at that right there. That's coaching, and of course that was a product of your program and stuff like that. But Coach, my other question to you said, do you have a standout moment or game experience or something that in your career that you can remember? It might have been an incident. It might have been something that happened, with your family or something like that.
Every year has produced something that has been just a real joy. Really has. Going to Hoover and winning that game at Hoover on ESPN, and Hoover coming off of that 2-a-day program that I thought was not really appropriate for high school, to be honest with you, and to go in their backyard and to win that ball game was really a highlight. It was something that was very special. But every year there's been something that you look back on and say, boy, what a special moment that was for this student or this athlete or this play. But certainly winning that first win in 1975 was exciting because nobody knew who John Curtis was at that point. We played Notre Dame at Crowley, and a quick story, we played them at City Park, and at that time there was no turf. It was just dirt. And you can imagine what City Park looked like in December. And the coach from Notre Dame said, we can't play here. This field's not playable. and I said, well, this is where we got to play. It's the only place we can play. And I said, they rolled it with the big roller right before the game. It'll be okay. And he looked at me like I was crazy because there was no grass on the field. And, of course, we ended up winning at 13-12 and won our first state championship. And that team has always had a very special place in our heart and in our school.
Coach, the Hoover game you talked about, and because we were playing you back then at that time, and when you played them, I might have mentioned to you and a couple other people, even the press, that Hoover doesn't know what they're getting into. And I said, because if you haven't played John Curtis, you don't really know what you're getting into. And, that I remember that very well. And, Coach, I also remember a game that you and I met in the semifinals at Yenny, and with the sleeting and everything.
The sleet and the snow and the freezing cold. And one of your assistants, I can't remember, I don't know if it was Coach Stein, I can't remember who it was, came out in short sleeve shirt. And he was gonna show them that weather didn't make any difference. Halftime, he was bundled up. He came out at halftime and he said, "Heck with this, man."
We were all blue.
That was a miserable night. You're exactly right.
The quarterback, poor thing. I mean, he was a good quarterback too. The first pass he threw actually landed on the track because he couldn't feel his fingers, something like that.
I get on Ed Daniels all the time. I built a little shelter under the overhang at East Jefferson, and I tried to get my quarterbacks to go under the shelter between defensive series so they could try to stay warm. Right. They couldn't get in because Daniel and his cameraman were in there, and I couldn't get in out of the doggone shelter.
It was miserable. Coach, last but not least, that we're going through a little time with the LHSAA and about this injunction. In fact, I'm on the Let's Be Frank segment of it. I'm going to talk about that, about this injunction going on that might change the playoffs drastically. That would really impact you guys. And if it stands, it could go back to 13 teams in your division. And I hope it doesn't, but it's going to have quite an impact on football. And I really don't know. I mean, but I got a lot to say about that because I really think that, you know how I feel about the whole organization right now. And sure. I think Mr. Bonine is trying to do the best he can with it. But that's a little curveball that could take place. And we don't know when that appeal is going to take place.
No, and that's what I think. That's what the real concern is. Are they going to get this thing done in time so that we can all make the adjustments we need to make? But here's the deal, Frank. It doesn't hurt me. It hurts these kids. That's what I have such a hard time understanding, man. Anybody that would look at that playoff system that we had to participate in for all those years couldn't in no way, shape, or form think that was fair, think that was an equitable system. And what Mr. Bonine did is he stepped up and said, wait a minute. If the complaint has been that the private schools and the parochial schools can take children outside of their district, and you other schools now are doing the same thing, then by definition, you're moving into the select division just like they do. Mm-hmm. And now they don't like that. They don't want to abide by their own rules. The rules that the whole deal was, we could get kids from outside of our district and they couldn't, and so forth and so on. And whether that was true or not true, that was what was going on then. Well, Mr. Bonine stepped in and said, ho, this is an inequity. We're going to get it straight. And I appreciate him standing up for what was right. And the last thing I'll say, and I think I mentioned this before, they tried to get this thing changed twice during the summertime. They tried to get a quorum of principals that really believed this was an unfair situation, and they could not gather enough people together to get a quorum to get a vote. That ought to say something to the judge. Exactly. These principals are running this association. They have not approved what is going on, and we need to proceed as we have in the past.
Yeah, all they had to do was ratify Coach in January. It's been so simple and all the thing. And it was last year, and I will say this later, they had a competitive Superdome experience. I mean, the games in the Superdome last year, all of them were pretty good football games.
Yes, sir. No question.
There's a criteria that he can lean on right there.
And to get there, Frank, it was competitive.
Yes.
To go on the road and have to play people was competitive, and that's what this thing should be about. So I hope that we'll continue on as we have in the past.
Yeah, Coach, you remember that? I mean, there's a school complaining about playing up in 5A. Well, we've all had to endure that over time. Playing up, and you played 4A for years and years when we were all together.
Right.
Even though you had a 2A enrollment, I remember that well. But Coach, listen, I really appreciate everything you've done for the program, for your program, and being on our program, and your future, and the national champion. It would be nice to know that. Well, we played against you. We're part of that, and we help you get there faster than most people. And you have a heck of a family, Coach. And it's just a pleasure for you to be our first guest of the year on this podcast, also. And we can't thank you enough for doing that. And lots of luck and also luck with your health, and also we pray for your wife and her health and the boys as well, and your whole family.
Well, I appreciate that. And before we close, let me say this to you. I know you're a very modest man, but you were a great role model for my son. and you're a great role model. And we talk about that experience he had with you all at Tulane, and what an influence you were in his life, and to see your sons carry that forward, and to continue to be the role model they are for that community is a tribute to you and your wife and your whole family. So thank you for having me, and we look forward to a great year, and look forward to have the opportunity to visit with you all again.
Thank you so much, Coach, and good luck, and God bless you.
Thank you.
We want to once again thank head coach of the John Curtis Patriots, J.T. Curtis, and we'd also like to thank our sponsor, LSR, for being a sponsor of the Let's Be Frank video podcast. LSR produces Southern Cane Pure Cane Sugar, which is only grown, refined, and packaged in Louisiana. Southern Cane is available in your local Associated Grocers and Rouse's supermarkets.
Samuel Accardo Jr. and Henri P. Dufresne, your go-to River Parish lawyers. Experience, tenacity, and results. Sammy Accardo and Henri Dufresne provide comprehensive legal services in personal injury, hurricane claims, business litigation, successions, and estate planning. Our trial experience, know-how, and commitment to protect and serve our clients is unparalleled. We provide complete real estate, title, and escrow services through our affiliate, State Title LLC. The River Parishes is our home, and serving our communities is our passion. Based out of Gramercy, Louisiana, LSR produces Southern Cane Pure Cane Sugar, which is only grown, refined, and packaged in Louisiana. LSR utilizes the latest innovations in technology, as well as ensuring the growth and stability of Louisiana's sugarcane farmers by integrating more than 800 growers in the industry's economic structure. Southern Cane is available in your local Associated Grocers and Rouse's supermarkets.
Since 1972, Riverlands Insurance Services has been dedicated to securing the best insurance products and services available to protect you, your family, your assets, and your business. Our goal has been to establish a strong relationship and partnership between you, the insurance company, and our agency, creating a circle of success that prepares for disasters before they actually happen.
Welcome back to our third and final segment of the Let's Be Frank video podcast. We would like to thank our sponsor, Riverlands Insurance, for being a part of the Let's Be Frank podcast. Since 1972, Riverlands Insurance Services has been dedicated to securing the best insurance products and services available to protect you, your family, your assets, and your business. Our goal has always been to establish a strong relationship and partnership between you, the insurance company, and our agency, creating a circle of success that prepares for disasters before they actually happen. Let's go ahead and move on to our Let's Be Frank segment. And Coach, we kind of alluded to it earlier, but today you're going to go ahead and talk about the LHSAA playoff injunction and what that entails. So go ahead and take it away.
Yes, everybody. Let me first of all say, if you're confused about this whole issue, welcome to the club, because almost everybody actually hasn't been much clarification on what's going on here. There's been a lack of transparency, but basically what has happened last year, the LHSA decided to redefine the definition of what select was, which meant to put more schools in the playoff brackets, and the definition which meant that if you had some type of component, a magnet component or a charter school component where you can draw from anywhere in your parish, and the play you'll consider a select school based on 25% of your enrollment being from outside that particular parish. Well, they expanded that particular definition, and more people were put on the side of what they call select. And it was almost balanced, even more schools in the LHSAA rather than select. Personally, I'd love to see him, you heard me say this before, I'd love to see him change the name, the ugly term of select and non-select, I think it'd be better served if you went traditional or non-traditional. So what had happened, there were 9 schools, and mostly from North Louisiana. 4 of those schools don't even play football. They filed an injunction against the LHSAA, claiming that it was unfair as far as the bracket was concerned. The leader of that was Neville High School. Their principal was also an ex football coach. Claimed that basically they were playing in 5A competition, and they would love to prefer to play in 4A competition like they were the year before. Well, there was supposedly 2 other meetings, and it was never ratified actually what select was. And in terms of that, and then in January meeting, it was not brought up at the January meeting. This is the big meeting that the LHSA meets, and they decide on constitutional issues every January, held at the Crown Plaza. Well, anyway, as of last week, the injunction went through, and the judge ruled in favor of these schools, meaning that right now there's a stoppage of playoff the way it is. So we really don't know what the playoff format is going to be in November, when the 10-game schedule is over with. So right now there's the appeal process. Nobody knows when that's going to take place. And the judge ruled based on this. Now, and listen to this statement. The judge ruled that the principals really did not know what they were voting on at that particular time when they changed it. Now, you're talking about 80% of all the LHSAA schools voted for this proposal and to do this sort of thing. And some of those schools didn't even go. Some of the 9 schools, 4 of them didn't even go to make the vote. So basically, the judge made the ruling on that people did not know what they were voting on. And now you got to listen to this, how ludicrous this is to make that statement, because who's he talking to? He's talking to principals of schools who are PhDs. They're masters. They have master's degrees. These people have been in education, some of them for 30, 40 years, and they can't read. Let me tell you how this works. About 2 or 3 weeks before every convention in January, they have meetings, and they call them area meetings. And the principals go to these area meetings, and they go through the agenda, and they describe to them exactly what the agenda item is going to be. If you vote yes, this is what it means. If you vote no, that's what it means. Now, and also on the Thursday, they have what they call, but prior to the Friday vote, which is always on a Friday, prior to the big meeting or the voting meeting, they have class meetings. So you go in your particular class, whatever you are, whether you're class A, 2A, or whatever, and you go to the class meeting. Again, these agenda items are talked about. And if there's a high-profile item, it's brought up to the floor and discussed. And then on Friday, the parliamentarian will tell you the rules of the convention, and also the leader, the LCSA president, will tell you exactly how you're voting on this thing. If you vote no, and they have a little clicker in your hand, or you vote yes, they tell you exactly what you voted for. So for the judge to insinuate that these people didn't know what they were voting for, that the lawyers can pick that apart, and that this thing is not going to, I don't think, going to go anywhere as far as that's concerned. But now this could happen if the injunction goes through. You could see the select schools going back and saying, why wouldn't they? I know I would. I would go back to the venue they had 2 years ago, where they could find their own championship game, and they'll make a lot more money than playing in the Superdome. So you can see that happening. Mr. Bonine tried to keep them all together. This is not, he inherited this situation. It's not his fault. And a lot of people looked at this as him running an end run. Let me tell you what could happen. And just remember that I said this. This judge could rule that, wait a minute now, with all this controversy about what select is, why don't we just go way back to 2013 and put it all back together again? And then, wow, then that would be tremendous. I would think a lot of people like to see that. Naturally, some won't. But I really would encourage anybody to stay tuned, because we really don't know where this is going to go.
Thank you, Coach, for giving us that information. And we know that there's been so much back and forth over, which way this playoff system's going to go, how it was last year, how it will finally settle. But again, still a lot to look forward to in terms of how things will play out there. And our next segment, we'll have our Blitz the Ball Coach segment, where Coach is going to answer a question from either myself or somebody out there in the Twitterverse or in the world. So, Coach, this week's question that we want to have answered is, what is the difference between bracket and man coverage?
You know, Jason, if you watch a lot of football, a lot of times these commentators will try to tell you how much what they know. I really wish I had a board behind me, and there's no reason why I should not in the future. But man coverage, there's a lot of different types of man coverage. You can have what they call cover one, which means one safety, and everybody else is the man, but the safety is a free safety. He's able to float and go anywhere he wants to. That's called man free. You have another cover, what they call zero coverage, means pure man, and there's no free safety. It's locked up coverage. And there's nobody in the middle of the field, but everybody has a man to cover. That's zero coverage. But bracket coverage is when you take a receiver, for instance, if you have two receivers on one side, you're going to bracket one of the receivers. In other words, you get on the same level, maybe 8 to 10 yards deep. And suppose the bracket calls for we're going to bracket the number 2 receiver, which means the second guy in the slot. So what happens, if that's the case, there's underneath coverage, man coverage on one guy, but there's double coverage on the other guy. And it's real easy to do and really easy to disguise. And it's up to the quarterback. So you can bracket either guy on your side. If you want to bracket the outside guy, you just wait till he comes off the line of scrimmage. But somebody has to play that one guy man. So it's up to the quarterback to find where the single coverage is, because the other guy has 2 people side by side. Now, what does that mean? They've got a guy on the left side of him, right side of him, on either side, and they kind of box him in. It's a little different than what they call 2-man coverage, where somebody's underneath and somebody's on top. This is a side-by-side type of coverage. And that it's quite easy to disguise, and it's up to the quarterback what they call the post-snap read. After the third step, a quarterback normally gets what they call a post-snap read. When he's underneath the center on an initial snap, that's a pre-snap read. He said, well, this is where they are now. But then he has to look for the rotation. Some people disguise it extremely well, and that's what it's all about. You know, in college and the NFL, it's not like high school. In high school, you're going to see a lot of the same coverages the entire game, depending upon formation. But when you get to college and the pros, almost every snap is a different look, a different front, and a different situation. But bracket coverage is very, very effective. And if a quarterback does not recognize it right away, he's going to throw several interceptions.
Thank you, Coach, for breaking down that question for us, and of course, appreciate the wealth of knowledge that you bring. We're going to go ahead and move on to our last segment, which is the lock of the week. Coach, I think I'm going to go for a different strategy this year. I'm going to try to win the games that I pick, right? I couldn't have won if I was betting on a one-horse race last year. So let's try to move away from those losses and get some wins in the column. But
I didn't do much better, Jason. I got to add that. I didn't do much better.
I at least heard some wins from you. I don't know if I picked a win all year. I mean, if you picked the opposite of what I picked last year, you probably made bank. So hopefully I can do better this year for our listeners. Now, Coach, who's going to be your pick for this first week?
I'm going to go with North Carolina. And I'm going to spot South Carolina to the 2.5 points. And I'm going to go North Carolina, big crosstown rivalry. But it's a sentimental pick because I had a chance to know that Derek May in the Manning camp, and that's a sentimental pick, and that's a real bad reason to make a pick. And when you try to gamble, so that's not a very good foundation.
Coach, I'm going to go ahead and go different. I usually go with the favorite. I'm going to go ahead and pick East Carolina plus 35.5. They're playing Michigan. It is on the road. East Carolina is usually a sneaky, dangerous team, and Michigan's without a head coach. So we'll see how that plays out on the sideline. I do think that'll cause some confusion, and it'll give just enough effort for ECU to pull off the points. But we'll see. I've been wrong before, so we'll see if I can change my luck.
Exactly.
But that'll do it here for us, and we want to go ahead and make sure you guys know where to follow us on our social medias. Again, you can follow us on Facebook at the Let's Be Frank Video Podcast. You can follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok at DLBF Podcast. And you can also listen to us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Google Podcasts. So that'll wrap things up for our first episode. And, Coach, any final words before we head out of here?
The only thing just special, Ryan Perilou and Jay Roth will be inducted to the LSSAA Hall of Fame next year. So kudos to those guys. That they're well deserved, and certainly both these guys are local. Jay was at Rummel, and Ryan Perilou is right there, played at East St. John. So congratulations to those guys. And listen, guys, everybody, please go to church of your choice every Sunday.
Thank you so much, Coach, and we want to thank everybody for listening again. Join us next week, same time, same place. So for Coach Monica and for Justin Thomas, I am Jason Duhe, and remember, let's lay ball over and let the good times roll.